Is roaming around Marshall County looking for people to interview, and today we're going to visit in the home of Mrs. Elwood, Bertha Gordon that is, who lives on Joe Creason Drive. And we appreciate your letting us come by, Miss Gordon. I know you have one very famous neighbor who's a friend of mine, and that's Miss Margaret Heath. This morning I noticed you were out helping her walk the dog around, or at least you were watching.
Well, as a matter of fact, I hadn't made up my mind for sure whether I'd be at the meeting tomorrow until this morning. And in order not to call her back in the house to call her and ask her about whether I was too late or not, I just went down and joined her with the dogs.
Well, good. We'll get to hear Carl Harrison, a good Marshall County boy who's now working at the Paducah Sun, so I'm sure it'll be a very enjoyable event. You were born in Marshall County, were you?
No, I was born in Stewart County, Tennessee.
Well, that's a neighbor county, not very far. Let's see, that's...
a little town known as Big Rock.
Well, I was going to ask you if you were from Bumpus Mills.
That's not very far from Bumpus Mills, you know.
Good. Dover is the capital city.
Dover is the county seat. And, of course, my birth record is there.
That's very good. Now, your father was whom?
My father was Bracy Knight, and he's also Stewart County, Tennessee man.
And your mother was?
My mother was born in Big Rock, Tennessee.
Uh-huh. All right. Now, have you traced your ancestry way, way back? Do you remember your grandparents, maybe?
My sister and I have been trying to get a little further back in that, but my mother, who was Annie Yarborough, there was such a few people in that family, and most of them died fairly young. But I do know that my mother's family, the Bonds and the Yarboroughs, her mother was a Bond, and the Yarboroughs, they're English and Irish.
Good Anglo-Saxon stock. Sounds just like Marshall County.
And their English accent still comes through as they talk. Now.
And choice of words is frequently King James Version of the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And my grandmother, which was the mother of my own mother, had a brother, John Bond, who worked as a reporter for some paper out from Chicago. I don't remember the name of it, if I ever knew. And some way he and a friend of his, who was Edwin Yarborough, worked together, and they went to England for something concerning the paper, which I don't remember now and all. And as they got to be good friends, and when they came home, and Edwin met John's sister, Rhoda Francis, they married.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they had 3 children, one daughter, Daisy, a son, James, and my mother, Annie. And then he died when my mother was 7 years old. Edwin Yarborough died at that age. And then my mother married at age 17, and at age 20 I was born. And the next year her mother died, so I never had the pleasure of knowing her. I have a picture and her description of her that she's a petite little person, which is hard to believe me being in my size. But, and then my mother's sister died at age 67. Her brother died at 78. And my mother lived to be 88. And I should have learned more family history from her, but we were quite a large family and a very busy family, and to me it didn't seem too important as long as I was there. You know, it didn't matter.
Surely.
Much, you know.
Well, I could kick myself 100 times for things I didn't ask. I had a great-grandmother, for example, a great-great-grandmother who lived to be 104. Now, why I didn't ask her a lot of things, I just shows how stupid I was back then, I guess.
I was trying to think what. My mother's sister being 10 years older than my mother, she was more like a mother to her than a sister.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very fond of her. And she had one daughter 6 years older than me. And we have struck up a correspondence now, after being 15 years nearly since we've been in touch with her. And I'm learning a lot from the family, about the family from her that she remembered. Not long ago, in a telephone conversation she had, she said she remembered so well of my mother taking her by the hand to see Haley's Comet.
Well, isn't that
Well,
something?
naturally, I perked up.
And that's every 76 years.
And she said, she was very young in 1910, and she's 6 years older than me, so she said she well remembered that and what a thrill it was.
Mm-hmm.
She was my mother's only niece, and my mother thought she was really great. So I'd like to talk to her more about that and plan to be with her this summer, if I can visit her then, or she can visit me.
You've probably watched some of the TV where they had a satellite that's been sent up to view it. And
Yeah.
marvelous pictures.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing what technology has done since the year 1910, but in a way it's even more marvelous to me that this British scientist, so many hundreds of years ago, was able to figure out the orbit. And
that is amazing, really.
Yeah. Well, that's a fairly rural county, so was your dad a farmer?
My father was a farmer, a tobacco farmer.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's typical crop for this
And
part of the world, and he grew tobacco. And
he had great pride in it. He loved the land. And he
did you ever help in tobacco?
Oh, yes, that's part of your life. Mostly when I wanted to, because I really loved to be out.
Mm-hmm.
And he was such a joy to work with.
Mm-hmm.
Of
course, back then we didn't have all the sprays and things they have now, so we had to worm it and sucker it.
Well, as I told you, the worming didn't appeal to me too much, but I didn't do that. But I did pull a few suckers, and I would drop tobacco plants. And it was very enjoyable because he told very interesting stories, some of them handed down from his grandmother, who told of the Civil War things, slave days, and all that sort of thing. And before you knew it, it was time to go home to lunch.
And Fort Donaldson was nearby, so there were a lot of stories to tell in that area.
Yes, and I wish I'd learned more about them, because to tell you the truth, in the day when I was a child, living near Big Rock, to get to Dover, you crossed the river.
Mm-hmm.
And you went across in a ferry. So my mother's brother lived in Dover, and I made 2 trips to visit him there. So I didn't get much about Dover for many years later.
Mm-hmm. Well, you probably went to a small school in that area. Was it a one-room country school, maybe?
A two-room school, and there was always a man who taught the upper grades, and a woman would teach the lower grades.
He had to take care of the discipline, the unruly boys.
So that's, well...
What did you like most in school? Were you a math wizard or a speller, reader?
Well, I was no wizard in anything, but I dearly loved spelling.
Uh-huh.
But, as I say...
All right, we've got...
The fun in spelling, and what we spoke of, that is in the lower grades, was arithmetic matches and spelling matches, and that would always come in on Friday after writing lessons and things, and I enjoyed all of that very much.
Did they have things like pie suppers and box suppers?
Yes, they were, and they were things you could either come home real happy or broken-hearted or embarrassed to death. Wrong one gets your pie, and you're supposed to eat it with him.
Yeah, you didn't like that.
And if it's someone who really wanted your pie, poor guy, you'd feel so sorry for him, because they would just keep bidding him down, and he'd pay his last cent for it, or he would give up in desperation. You'd sit in the corner and eat that pie with some girl you didn't like at all.
Well, that's a beautiful description of what would happen.
And, of course, there was nearly always a beauty contest with that.
Uh-huh.
But again, the boys were simply taken advantage of, because they'd try to vote for their girl, you see, and put in the money as long as it lasts. One embarrassing time, that I was supposed to have gotten it. And my boyfriend was just too sensible to let him rob him. He knew it didn't mean that much to me, but the girl that got it, very sweet girl, but I came home feeling like first thing I wanted to see the mirror if I really looked like that. No wonder.
Yeah.
Really look worse than that.
Oh,
it was fun.
You're a beautiful lady now, I know that. So, now, when you grew up, of course, let me ask you how you met your husband.
Well, I met him in Murray. He was a student there, and I met him, and I tell you, he was the greatest guy I ever met.
Mm-hmm. Well, so you were going to school in Murray or working there when
I was living there, and I wasn't going to school that year, but I did, later and all. But when I met him, we were married 3 months later.
Yeah, well,
No doubts about it.
It was kind of love at first sight then, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, Elwood was a big, handsome fellow.
Oh, yeah, I know that.
I knew he went to Murray State. I don't recall what year he was graduating.
He graduated in 32.
1932. Well, that's long in about the year of Harry Lee Waterfield.
Yes.
And that group of students. I think Forrest Pogue was in the class of 31. So he knew a lot of the famous early people around there. Now, where did he go to law school?
Louisville. He attended the Jefferson School of Law in the evenings and the University of Louisville in the daytime. He got his degree in law in 3 years. And his life was much more eventful than mine. I thought he was, there'd be something to tell.
Yeah, well, now let's see. Was Elwood a native of Marshall County?
Yes, he was born down here at Heights and graduated from Aurora High School.
Aurora High School. Well, there were some famous people there, like Damon Harrison, who's been commissioner of several of the departments in Frankfort over the years. I'm sure there are many, many more. I believe Lida Hill is a graduate of Aurora High School, Woodrow's wife.
Yes, he knew them, and I met him, but I didn't know him very well. And I really didn't know a lot of people down there because we were both up there at Murray until he was graduated. And I don't know whether you know or not, but he entered the race for county court clerk before graduation, which was to be in June, of course. And he just came in one day and announced that he thought he would do that. He said, I don't have anything to lose. I don't have any money to put into it.
The Depression, you're right in the middle of the Depression, terrible time.
In the middle of it.
So that gave him the idea, since he didn't have a job, he might as well try it.
And going through school, the janitor force was his job. And he was captain of the janitor force, which paid $20 a month. And when we married, the people that were in the apartment for us charged us $13 a month. And if we had a $5 grocery bill, it was a little hard to meet.
Yeah.
And if my parents hadn't lived nearby.
Did they bring you a head of cabbage once in a while and a few eggs?
My mother would dress chickens, and somehow she would just package the breast, the white meat, and bring it over to, or send it over to us.
That is your favorite.
That was their favorite. It was also her favorite. That's the reason I felt
so
badly about it.
But she gave it away. Yeah.
And when my dad, as I said, he took pride in all of his work concerning farm. He loved it. And I've never before nor since in my life tasted hams as well as he could cure them. Now, Lee came out with a light for him.
Well, nobody could compete with your
dad. When they would
though,
cut a ham, he would cut what we call the heart of the ham, and that came over to Elwood and me. See?
That's a touching story. It reminds me of my
In January,
parents.
before he was to graduate in June, they were trying to give the chance for people to go to college that had to work their way through. And there was no easy way to do that, but they decided, those who had were in their third year anyway, let's just cut them out of the job and give the freshmen a chance to come in. And in a way that sounded fine, but when you had worked hard to get, and you got to junior year and think, oh my goodness, now what will I do from now to June? Elwood came in and out with that announcement to me. And
what in the world did you do?
I started to cry, and he said, don't do that, I got it all figured out. I'm not stopping. If I sleep out here on the campus, I'm not stopping. And if you will, you can go out to your mother's and you can stay there until June. And that week, you already had a certificate to teach, we can do that. Well, I didn't say anything, that's okay, but I didn't like the idea. So the word got out, and all the factories were really sweet. They found he would do just anything for it. They began to wash their cars, rake their lawns or whatever. So we took a cheaper apartment, $7 a month. Had a few drawbacks. The lady had a big
but you were willing to do it, and of course that helped Elwood a lot.
I was not about to let him stay up there and sleep on the campus without me at least being somewhere nearby.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, we took this cheaper apartment, and we could cook every day on the stove when she was cooking, but not on Saturday because she didn't cook on Saturdays.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, it ended up he'd bring a bunch of cars down there to be washed on Saturday. We'd both wash the cars and clean them up good. Mm-hmm. And we did pay her rent, and at the end of the month, somehow we'd come out with a little bit more than we'd been making before. So we got through the graduation,
uh-huh.
and by that time he had already announced for to be a candidate for this county court clerk thing, and came on out. Okay, Wendell had decided to be born in August.
Yeah.
The election was August the 5th. August the 18th he came. I wasn't old enough to vote, and that was a long day.
Back then you had to be 21. So.
And he had just turned 21 in April, so he could vote for himself. He could also.
Yeah.
I couldn't even vote for him. But I went down to Heights, and during that summer while he was in race, I spent a lot of time with my mother. Mm-hmm. So he could be out running around, you see. Because
now,
at that
this
time,
was the first race he'd ever made.
Mm-hmm. And at that time, the people whose homes you didn't visit, you didn't get their vote. They thought you should.
Mm-hmm.
So he borrowed $135 from his uncle, bought a car, got in it, and it's a very interesting summer. He met other people like Jim Barnes. Maybe they'd share rides. Mm-hmm. And they would conveniently stop at people's houses to ask for their vote around noon, get invited in for...
Get a meal.
Yeah.
So, people were friendly back then, weren't they? And they weren't as afraid of...
Well, no, you were not afraid to go to anyone's house or anything like that.
Now, did he win this first race?
Or? Oh, yes, he won it.
Well, I knew he was county court clerk, but I thought, I didn't know
he
this full story, whether maybe he ran once and lost and then ran again and won.
No, he won it and did very well.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't get, there was no radio out to his mother's home out there at Heights. I sat out there. And it was after dark before I got I don't know what time now, but I finally got the news. Now I said, we can buy some clothes for this baby.
Yeah.
And so,
did you?
We came on down here. We went on back, of course, and stayed with my mother because the baby was due pretty soon. Mm-hmm. The baby was born at the clinic in Murray, and in 1 month we brought him down here and took an apartment with Miss Nonnie Pace. Mm-hmm. And he went up here helping Clint Smith to learn more about the office. You see.
Yeah.
So. From then on, you probably know as much about that story.
I know a good bit of the story from then on, of course. How in the world did he ever manage to squeeze in law school, though?
That had to wait. That was one of the first things I learned about him, that his ambition was to study law.
Uh-huh.
And with things being so, I might say, tight with the depression and all, he was glad to just forget about law and entered clerk's office. He got that for 2 terms, easy enough.
Mm-hmm.
After that, we mentioned one day about the law school, and said, well, that's just over. By that time, we had 5 children. And I had thought all along that law is not over. You don't have to do everything in your teens to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I suggested that he go on law school anyway. He said, had you ever thought about the problem we'd have of leaving the house, taking 5 children to Louisville, and managing on keeping and getting through school? And I said, you go on up there, and I'll hold down the fort here. I can handle this.
Well, wasn't that a...
And he went up there, and he wanted to work some while he was at it, too. We had saved up a grand sum of $40,000. Felt like we could afford to go.
Well, now, he must have been a pretty intelligent investor. Didn't he have some farms and later on? And
well, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And of course, after he got the law degree, then he continued to earn money. And
he went on, of course, set up office and
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, you helped him a great deal, but certainly he had a lot of ambition there. Now, before we lose all of our time, we just got about 5 more minutes. Let's talk a little bit about your children. Now, your first child was Wendell.
That's right.
And he became a physician. He's Dr. Gordon here in Benton now.
Yes.
I know you're proud of him.
I am very proud of him. He's a great pleasure to me.
Now, I remember one of the girls, I don't know if that was the youngest child or not, but now she married a physician over at Mayfield.
Yes.
Howard.
He studied medicine after they married. While she was finishing up college, he took his pre-med. He had talked about studying medicine, but decided he wouldn't do it. But she encouraged him at that, and they agreed that he would.
Mm-hmm.
So he took pre-med then at Murray, although he was already a graduate of Murray. And as you remember, he taught school down here for 2 years.
Yeah, he taught at Benton. I remember that.
But anyway.
Assistant basketball coach, I think.
Yes.
For a time. So on.
And so.
Now, I have his son in school at Murray State right now.
That's right, John.
John.
Great little guy.
Yeah.
Big guy.
Right now, the other children?
And then, of course, a little younger than Wendell is Glendale, my other son, and he's in Smithland, and he farms, loves every minute of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's Janice, Joette, and Fran.
Yeah. Now, I knew Wendell and Fran more for some reason.
That's
or
right.
other.
You've been
I've been around
together.
them.
That's right. I know that.
I remember when Wendell played basketball at PCC.
He went back. He got a little scholarship there, and that gave him courage. You know, he thought, well, I must do all right. You know?
Yeah. Very good. Very good. Well, let's, when you came to Benton, do you remember sort of what it was like? How much different was it then from now?
Well, it was very different. The first thing I found a bit amusing, Miss Nonnie Pace explained why she had a pair of muddy overshoes sitting on her back porch. They had just gotten through putting in the water in the street, and she still hadn't had time to clean the mud off her shoes. Water mains out there, and then right away we started looking for a lot to build us a home, and we decided on this one here in Gravel Street.
Mm-hmm.
And this street, by the way, was known then as Maiden Avenue.
Maiden Avenue?
Maiden Avenue.
I didn't know that.
I have a picture of it. Ray Mofield gave me much later years when they were planning on building their house over here. And they had made a picture going across the street, and it's labeled on the back, a new home, the Elwood Garden on Maiden Avenue. And then a few years later, I think it was after the WPA had put in this street out here, you see, covered the gravel with concrete. Then they named it Maple Street, and I like that a lot, because I do think we had more nice maples on this street than there anywhere.
A beautiful street.
But then later, and then we did get house numbers then. But you know all this, of course, as well as I do. But then when Joe Creason drive, and I still get Maple Street address letters. From
Well,
different
now I've
things.
learned something, though, that I didn't know. I've never heard anyone tell, and I've interviewed about 150 people, that it was Maiden.
Well, it's on their deed, Maiden Avenue. I don't know how far it runs down, whether it runs as far as Maple Street. Maple Street, as you know, winds around in different ways and all like that.
Very, very interesting point. So, Benton did not have paved streets when you
No,
came
it
here.
didn't. It did have blacktop around the square.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know really how much more. I was a rather busy lady for a long time, actually.
With 5 children, I can well understand that.
And I used to, as a relief from the children, get a sitter and go up and work in the office with Elwood some during the car licensing periods and all like that. There's plenty to do. And then I like to do proofreading and a few things and a small amount of typing if I felt up to it. And
Well,
all like that.
you've had a very interesting life, and we appreciate you allowing us to come to this beautiful home. And unfortunately, our time has slipped away. So, we're going to have to simply thank you and then sign off and remind everybody that we've been visiting in the home of Mrs. Elwood Gordon at 1303, now Joe Creason Drive, one-time Maple, and one-time Maiden Street. Or Maiden Avenue. This is Ray Mofield returning you to our studio.